Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Last time we met, we talked about the process of defining your customer and how to create a sort of mood imagery for that customer. And today we're going to be going even further into our process development book, and we are going to be discussing how to interpret our brainstorming images and choose colors that work well together, and also choose textures that we want to explore in the final designs. So let's get started. All right, everybody. So last time we talked about the process of coming up with this page, and we made this page, which described our customer and who we're designing for. And so this time we are going to create a separate page dedicated to color and texture. Now this page is not going to be a mood board. It is not going to be your final way of giving that visual information to someone about what inspired you. It's more or less you processing what you just put on the page to come up with things that might relate to apparel. So when it comes to color and texture, we're not talking about defined textures. We're not talking about slapping fabrics on the page or going out and getting color swatches. We're just playing around with different ideas. So when you're doing this process, one thing to keep in mind is there are two different ways to go about choosing, in my opinion, there are two different ways to go about choosing your colors from your inspiration and putting it on this page. So the first way is obviously doing what we're gonna do, which is to take these colors from our direct, sources to use as our inspiration. There's another way that the industry will sometimes sort of teach about if you go to school for this, and that is to use trend forecasting companies who basically will show you how to, access their system, and then within their system, they will give you a breakdown of what colors and what textures, what fabrics, what silhouettes, everything that's trending. And so this is not we're making a collection based on trend book. This is we're making a collection based on our own thoughts and processes. So if that's something that you want to do, I can do a separate video for that, and we can look into what is trending for a certain season and create a whole video on how to make that happen. But this one will not be about that. This is just taking what we've already done and using that as inspiration. So when we talk about color, one thing to keep in mind is no matter what you have going on in your color story or your mood images or your brainstorming, what you have to know before you can even think about what looks good together is basic color theory. And you don't need to know the extent of, everything, but you do need to know the basics, because you can choose things if you want to that don't necessarily work together, but it's helpful to know at least the primary understanding of color theory. So for those that don't know, color theory is basically a understanding of how colors relate to one another and how they relate to the environment around them. And so, choosing something like you could choose this bluish purple from this bruise. If we were to choose that and we were to choose something that is similar to that color, so I have some cards I will show you. We'll just say that this is that bruise color. It's purplish. It's called Cupid in this case. If we were to choose something that is analogous to that color, then we're choosing something like next to it on the color wheel. So if you've got purple, then your color wheel is all going to have warm tones. And so we're going to put a darker red next to it, and now we've got something that feels analogous. And you can keep going with the analogous color scheme, and you could choose a yellow, and then, so on and so forth. And so you're getting warm and you're staying in this family of colors. And then you could do where you have your purple, and you could choose a complementary to purple, which would be yellow. And so then you're getting a completely different vibe when you look at that. And so you have to come up with the sort of family of colors that you want to intermingle in this collection. And that's up to you to make a decision. So this is a book that I use, and it is called Understanding Color, an Intro for Designers, 5th edition by Linda Holtschuh, I think is how you say her name. And this is a color wheel that we're talking about here. And so as you can see, that color that I had earlier, and the red and the orange and the yellows all belong in the same side, and they share a side of the circle, which makes them analogous. Colors that are complementary to a color are opposite on the color wheel. So if you choose yellow, then the color that most complements that color according to this color wheel is violet. So choosing that yellow was what we were talking about earlier. And you can do anything, you have split complementaries, where you take a color and then there's a split to it where these are the same, or it might just be orange and then it becomes blue, or maybe you don't necessarily like that, so you could change it to its slightly different color blue. It's completely up to you, and it also depends on your inspiration. But what trend forecasters would do is actually give you the colors based on Pantone or other companies, and they'll show you what is going to be trending. And that's not what we're gonna do. We're just gonna go off of what is already in the inspiration, but this will kind of give you an idea of why I'm selecting what I'm selecting. So when it comes to actually making this page, it can be done in numerous ways, I guess. You could do it more tactile, where you are physically drawing, or in this case, what we're gonna do, use tracing paper to interact with the shapes and the textures and the lines that we like, and we'll use that tracing paper to mimic that image and place it here. You could also, take copies of it and then kind of cut it out. It just means that you're making it very hands-on, and you could touch it and interact with it on the page. You could also do a more digital version of it, where you could take these images and put them into Photoshop and Illustrator, and edit them, or take just the stuff that you like, that you find interesting and want to use, and then you could create a collage digitally and print it off and put it in here, and show that you work digitally on that part. And then there's one that's sort of both. So you could digitally make stuff, you could cut things out, you could collage it, you could make it mixed media. And so we're just gonna work with just getting the general idea of how this works, and we're not going to go into Adobe Illustrator or Photoshop, because that is a video for another time. So another really important tip whenever you're working on this page is to think about working it in groups. And so if it helps you to create quadrants on your page, that's more than fine. If it helps you to just think of one or two things and then just do each page, and you can, like I said, each section can have as many pages as you want it to. It just it's whatever helps you think, and that's really what this page is going to do. So the best thing that helps me whenever I'm trying to at least define the things that I think are interesting is to think of color and then texture. Because think about it, if you were to find something really cool in your image that really could be a nice coat, if you were to choose the fur kind of idea first and then look for the textures that you find interesting, and then kind of go into the color, what's going to end up happening is you'll realize that not all the things you select that you want to explore work with each of your textural ideas. And so nobody really can produce 1,500 units of a bright orange furry jacket, at least not for this person. So it just depends on who you're designing for, but in this case, I like to think, when I'm working like this, of color first. So that's what we'll do. So for this, I have purchased a 168 piece marker set. It is very similar to the Copics markers, kind of similar to Prismacolor, but they were much cheaper than you'll find on the market for the other two brands. They're professional grade, they are alcohol based, and that's what I use. You can also use watercolor, you could use color pencil, and of course there will be several other videos to come that will show you how to work with these mediums and actually explore them in different ways. But in this case, to make it simple, I'm going to use those markers, and I will insert a clip of them just so if you wanted to get them, I'll put the information and put it kind of right here so you can see that. So if you were working with a really large mood board, or if you're working from a whole bunch more images, like I said, this is for time reasons. I'm not going to go all out. That's why I filled a lot of the white space in with line. You can collage it on top of it. You can make it so many layers. It could be huge. You could put it on an 18 by 24 and take a photo of it and then put it in here. You can do whatever you want just to explore the concept fully. So for this purpose, we are going to just use a regular piece of paper. I'm not even using sketch paper. You can use whatever you want. This is just going to be a scrap sheet that you can play around with, and obviously this would change depending on what you're using. So if you're using watercolor, obviously you can't quite use just a regular piece of printer paper. So for some people, they like to take sticky notes and go in here and mark the different things and colors that they like. And for others, they like to actually like go in with a Sharpie and circle colors or outline the areas that work for them. And I've done that in the past. So, you know, you could do whatever you wanted to. It's up to you how you mark and identify what you like. Some people will take scans of this and then take those scans and put them onto this page so that they can play around with the different colors and the relationships of the colors. But this is how we're going to do it today. So how I work is I will just visually take the thing that I find to be the most inspiring in terms of color first, and I will just try to create this using whatever medium I'm working with, which in this case is markers. And so I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'm going to fast forward it just so it doesn't take up the whole video, and you'll kind of see how I'm going to identify the colors. So once you have this all done and you've found at least somewhat, a color story that you like, what you would then do is to start look at textures. And not everybody finds a lot of textures in their images. Sometimes they don't like to use texture. What you can do is take a piece of tracing paper, and this is how I do it. And I simply just go in here and start on my first page and start looking at the things that I like, and I will sometimes use Sharpie, sometimes use pen, but I just trace these things, and you can make your own textures. You just kind of make your own thing up, and you're just playing around. That's all you're doing. And so I like this one. I also really like this thing, and maybe this could be like 3-dimensional instead, you know, and maybe this becomes a collar. And so I really love this a lot. And so these things here might become something else. It's up to you. And I love, more than anything, this wrapping around structure thing that's going on this hand, because it sort of looks mummy-like. I don't know if that's the right word, but this is what I like. I also really like this bony kind of change in structure here. So you also, I'm looking at shapes as I'm doing this, and I'm only looking at the things that I find cool. So I like this almost wood grain structure here. It's really cool. But other than that, you know, you could even look into maybe this engraving component that the key has, and think about possibly doing something where you're engraving something. And so as you can see, it makes absolutely no sense, and I'm just going with it. But I really most likely will use something within the world of this fly, because I like bugs. But you know, I'll have this fur thing going on. And what's really cool is sometimes I'll take like this eye, for instance, and you can imagine what this would look like if it were blown up. And obviously we're not trying to make an eye turn into a dress, but we can imagine a fabric that has multiple puncturing marks or whatever. And then that's pretty much the extent of what you're doing. You're just going in and mimicking these shapes, and then you'll just put it all together. And so what I'll do before the next video is I will actually put these images, both this and this, on this page, and so you'll be able to see how that gets put in. But for the sake of time, I'll end the video here, and next time we will talk about how I finished this, and we'll go into our next video. So if you enjoyed this video, or if you enjoyed keeping up with this whole concept of the process development that it takes to go through a fashion design process, then please like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I'll see you next time. Bye.